Welcome back to a new week of Tea with the Shepherd. We're diving into First Peter 3 this week, and it's a lot. This one's a much more intense passage, and we're still building on the topic of suffering or enduring through suffering. And what is our conduct supposed to look like? Well, this particular section within that is now wives and husbands and how we are to respond in these situations with suffering. Again, continuing this conversation about suffering, because the whole book basically has to talk about suffering. So let's dive into chapter 3, verse 1. Wives, in the same way, be submissive to your husbands. So now this is going back to what we talked about in chapter 2. And if you missed it, go back and watch that, because this is going to build on it. So you have that as the foundation. So in the same way, going back to what we were saying then, is you're submitting one to another. You're showing love and respect to them as a person. Even if they are abusive or harsh, you still show love and respect to every person. Now, I'm going to pause briefly and also mention now, God hates abuse. God hates violence. In fact, there's several passages on this. You can go and study. God is about justice, not injustice. He rescues those who are oppressed. There is a verse in Malachi that talks about how much God condemns a husband who clothes himself with violence. Husbands are told to be gentle and loving and not harsh towards women, which he'll also say here towards their wives. But in the same way, the wives are also to be loving and respectful to their husbands. So God does not endorse violence. He does not endorse abuse. There are plenty of instances, and I'll go into this in a different part here, on what to do in those situations. But understand that the culture context that Peter is actually talking to often gets misconstrued that this was a utopian kind of culture, that everyone loved and respected each other, and he's just reminding the people of that. That's actually false. He was talking to a lot of more of a Roman culture and Greek culture. And under the Roman law, the husband or the father had absolute authority over the wives or their daughters, the members of the household. So for her to try to be a free woman could actually be rather dangerous for her. If the husband, Peter is talking to, for this situation, he's talking to women whose husbands are not Christians. And since in this time, the husband's religion is what determined what the religion of the household should be. And so if you were different than that, then it could cause a lot of problems. So he is going to address here is the best conduct in order to bring him to the Lord, to bring your spouse to the Lord, even though you have a different religion than him. This is how you approach this situation, and how you can do so through your behavior and through your actions and through your words, but also through not your words. And this is what he's going to go into. Now, again, just understand, this is not cookie cutter. You have to, there's principles that you apply in different situations. There's times that Paul talks about regarding situations, and I think it's in 1 Corinthians, where there are times you need to separate for safety reasons, with the goal of reconciliation and salvation for the spouse, and so that way you can come back together. That's the ultimate goal. But there's also the wickedness of human. So that is why Jesus said to the Pharisees that God permitted what's called a divorce papers, because of the wickedness of their heart. And it was to protect the spouse that was being abused, and to also make sure that in that time the women were taken care of, and it wasn't a bad situation. So there are different situations that you have to be able to look at scriptures, look at the principles, and apply it to your circumstance. Peter is not saying you need to stay in an abusive, manipulating situation. If it is endangering you or the kids, that does not mean that that's what he's saying is you need to stay in that and just endure the suffering through it. In fact, Proverbs 22:3 and Proverbs 27:12 say it is prudent when the prudent see danger and they take refuge. And there's several other situations where that is mentioned. I mean, you can look at stories where David did not stay in the palace with Saul, who was trying to kill him. You have Jesus, who many times withdrew because of them threatening his life. Paul, when they were threatening his life, they lowered him outside the walls in a basket. There are multiple times throughout Scripture when there is danger that you don't stay in the danger. Even Jesus said, when they're not going to accept you, leave. So now those are in situations where your life is in danger. And it also ties into another part where we're going to get into in the next section. But I just wanted to make sure I make that clear. Just because we're going to be talking about suffering and enduring through suffering in marriage situations, the goal here is not to endure through abuse, through physical abuse, or through things that are endangering your life. God hates violence. He hates the wicked that cover themselves in violence, and he wants to rescue. So if you're in a situation where that is the case, I think of the story where the man, there's a storm coming, a flood's going to take place, and he's given many opportunities and said, well, there's a truck, and it says, well, come on, we're going to get you out of this situation before your house floods. Well, no, I'm just waiting for God to deliver me. And so he stays in the house, and then the waters rise and a boat comes, and the man says, well, come on. The rescuer is saying, come on, get in the boat and let's get you out of here. And the man says, no, I'm waiting for God to deliver me. And then the waters rise more. Now he's on top of the roof of the house, and a helicopter comes to try to rescue him. And he says, no, I'm not going to go because I'm waiting for God to deliver me. And then he gets to heaven's gates because he dies in the flood. And he says, well, I was just waiting for you to deliver me. And God said, but I sent you a truck, a boat, and a plane, or a helicopter. I sent you ways to be delivered. So God does bring about ways to escape in situations. And it's a matter of sometimes how do we respond to it, and making sure that you do take those opportunities to get safe, to be prudent and wise in those dangerous situations. Now, given that, looking at what we're going to be talking about here, this is not necessarily in that physical abusive situation. Understanding that there was that in this culture. There was a lot of abuse. There was some good relationships, and there was some not good. There was some in between. But because of the way the laws were, if a woman did not adhere to the authority of her husband in that culture, then he had the right to beat her and to abuse her in many ways. And so this was not, like I said, this is not a utopian or a utopian situation that Peter is addressing here. There was a lot of suffering in these marriages at times. He's helping them understand what you can do to hopefully win your husband over if he was not a Christian. It's kind of what goes back to what we were talking about when I had my husband come on for last week, and we were talking about government and being submitted to government. Well, it's similar in that if the government is not doing what it's saying in chapter 2, verse 14, or to governors who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to commend those who do right. Well, that's the goal. That should be what the government does, is to protect the people, to punish those that are doing wrong, to reward those who are doing right. That should be the goal of the government. When it does not do that, that's when we have a right to appeal to heaven. That's actually where we have our appeal to heaven flag that was created way back in the very beginning, before our original flag, before our flag as we know it, the stars and stripes, came to be. So it is our duty to appeal to heaven and then try to change the circumstance through the right methods. And that is kind of the same thing here. You appeal to heaven, you follow through in your behaviors and your conduct in ways that can bring about change. When it gets to a certain point, when there is dangerous, that is when it's prudent to leave. You see the danger and you seek refuge. So, okay. Now let's actually read our text a little bit more. Wives, in the same way, be submissive to your husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives, when they see the purity and reverence of your lives. Now, the behavior word there is a Greek word that means behavior, but also means conversation. So Peter is emphasizing here that you can have behavior without words that will lead your husband to the Lord. And also the purity and reverence. Purity is uncontaminated, pure inside and out. And that tempers speech, because we've talked about that before in James, that when you have that purity, then it's going to temper your speech. And it's going to help you be able to communicate in different ways that truly reach the heart, not out of reaction and frustration and bitterness. And that is what he's saying, is when you live in this purity and reverence, and it's evident of the Holy Spirit inside your life that controls your speech, then it will begin to exude, and your beauty will begin to show from that inner beauty instead of the outward beauty. And that suffering that you may be going through, maybe the emotional struggles of being in an unequally yoked relationship, that can lead to salvation because of your godliness. And the word won over that is used here is mercantile term. It's actually used for exchanging one good for another, or trading up, so that they will no longer have the religion that they have, but they will trade up for the one that is true and better. And that's the picture that is given here. Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as braided hair and the wearing of gold jewelry and fine clothes. Instead, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. When it comes talking about braided hair, in this culture, again, because you have to understand the culture for all this, but the culture it was significant for rank and wealth as to how they dress, and with the braided hair, that was I'm higher than you kind of attitude. Well, what he's saying is that your behavior as women and the way you carry yourself, that should cause him to want to trade up. And in that beauty that is so internal, that is far more lasting. It'll cause you to be radiant and shine. The physical beauty, that comes and goes. And in fact, if you focus on the physical beauty and that's all you have, then he may go into another one later on when your physical beauty begins to fade, or at some point life changes, you have babies, you gain weight, or any of these things. Well, he's going to go on to the next one and the next one, because you focus on your physical beauty. But when it's an internal beauty, it's one that draws people to you, and it just exudes from you. And that's what you should adorn yourself with, is an internal beauty. Focus on that internal beauty. It's okay to have some of that outward beauty, but to dress nicely and all that. That's not what he's saying. He's saying don't make that such a focal point that you are trying to make your status greater just by the way you're dressing. It's not about just confidence here. This is a whole different level. Now, to end on this part with the quiet spirit, because we've actually talked about this before in Timothy, but the quiet spirit, this word in Greek is undisturbed, steady, settled, due to divinely inspired inner calmness. So it's not being silent. That's not what this is. It's not. It's a not misusing of words or overusing words that stir up a needless friction. It's a state of settled calm, undisturbed by external agitation or the things around, and it's free from internal strife. That's what this Greek word means. So there's a restful atmosphere that's produced in one's life that is ordered under God's gracious rule, and it displays a trust and a contentment in him. You're not trying to get contentment from your spouse. You're trying to find it in God first of all, and within his will. So this quiet life is not passive, but it's positive. It's steady. It's a steady composure that enables that fruitful thanksgiving and sincere worship to begin to just come forth. And the best picture of this quiet spirit is where Jesus is in the boat during a storm, and he's resting. He's quiet. He's at peace in the middle of turmoil, but he is undisturbed by the storm. So he's stable, he's sure, he knows how to deal with the storm, and he's in calm state. When he deals with it, he gets up, He goes to the front of the boat. He calms the storm, but the whole time he's in a calm state, even in the middle of all of that. And that's what this is the picture that this quiet spirit is talking about, is that you exude this sureness, this strength in the middle of it all, and you're undisturbed by the turmoil, even in your own home. And he uses this in 1 Timothy 2, that all should live in tranquil, peaceful way. So it's not, in 1 Thessalonians, it's not specifically just to the women. He's saying we should all live in this state. We'll pick up here tomorrow in verse 5, but I wanted to make sure I gave that background at the beginning and then kind of build upon that as we keep going. So we will start in verse 5 tomorrow.